Hey everyone, and welcome back to my channel. I'm Leslie with Joleelee Creations, and today we're going to be making the Breeze handbag by Meve Patterns. It's the first pattern I have made by her, and I absolutely love it. It's such a super cute compact pattern. Has a small gusset around the exterior. It has a magnetic slip pocket in the front. It also has a slip pocket in the back. You can also add a magnet here. I chose to divide it in the back to make two slip pockets. One easy for my phone. I just really like to stick my phone in the pocket in and out super quick, so that's why I divided that there with a seam. It has a zippered top. Super cute dinosaur pole. I'm so excited for this bag. This fabric I had ordered on joanns.com to meet my minimum order for delivery, and I absolutely love it. The inside has a zipper pocket and a slip pocket and just a small little gusset. It's just the perfect little bag to keep all the things in that you need. Super cute design and super easy. So here we go. Before we start, we need to go over all the pieces for our bag. I have cut a crossbody strap as well as a handbag strap because I wasn't sure if I wanted to make this a crossbody or a shoulder bag. We have our front pocket and our front pocket lining. We have our back pocket lining. We have our main body, and I interface that with Decaville light out of the seam allowance. We have our main body accent, main body lining pieces. We have our zipper pocket. I cut that in half since I am doing directional fabric, that way they'll both be going the same way. And then I have my slip pocket fabric here. I have two tabs for my D-rings. I did interface that with woven interfacing just because it did have a little bit of stretch to it. We have our zipper placard pieces. I did do both pieces of vinyl instead of vinyl on the top and lining on the inside. And we have our exterior gusset pieces. This is the exterior side pieces and the exterior bottom. The bottom is interfaced with Decaville heavy and then Decaville light strips out of the seam allowance on the sides. I did use woven interfacing on these pieces as well to prevent the stretch from the gusset. And then we have our gusset lining. For hardware, we'll need our zippers. I have my hardware for both straps, for the handle and the strap, my zipper pulls, magnet, and a name tag. I want to start working with my D-ring connector and my handbag strap. I'm going to mark a line down the center of both of these, and they are 3/4 inch D-ring connectors and a 3/4 inch strap. So we'll mark that at 3/4 of an inch down the middle. And we're going to do the same with our strap. Strap will be at 1.5 inches since we're going to fold that over twice. Take our double-sided tape and run that down the sides of our line that we just marked. We'll do the same, adding double-sided tape alongside of our lines on our D-ring connectors. Now we're going to remove the backing from our tape and fold the raw edge to our center line that we have made. The vinyl that I'm using for this pattern is the Buttah line from Weft+Warp. It's extremely soft and pliable. It does have a little stretch, but I don't feel like I needed to interface the strap any extra for this project as it's a super lightweight bag. If you're using it for something heavier, you may want to use a piece of ribbon down the center of your strap to give it a little bit more stability. Now we're going to add another line of double-sided tape down the edge of our strap. Peel off the double-sided tape and pinch together the folded edges to make your 1-inch strap. Now we can begin stitching down our top stitch on each side at an 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. I typically use a 4 or 5 stitch length when stitching down my straps, and make sure to back stitch really well at the beginning and the end. Now we need to do the same by top stitching down our D-ring connectors on each side. You can go ahead and daisy chain these together to make it a little bit simpler so you don't have to stop between each step. So to start making my handle, I want to slide on my swivel hooks first, making sure that they're both on the same side. And then we need to add our strap ends. So the strap ends will just slide on, and then we'll screw those in. Now that our strap ends are on, we need to add a rivet to secure our swivel hooks on. We have created our own strap guide that makes it perfect, consistent straps every time. If you don't have one, you can just mark them, eyeball it, and punch holes and attach your rivets. I'm going to use marks B and C lined up with our strap end here. Need to add our punch base to our cam snap press, and I'm going to punch the holes that we just made. Slide our swivel hook down, and we can put our rivet in. Using 9mm rivets from SiahSwag. They have been the most universal for me in all my makes. Just a really nice size to have. And then our handle strap is complete. Now we want to begin working with our front slip pocket. So we want to make sure that we transfer our snap placement to our lining side of our material. They should be mirrored, so we're going to place those right sides together. And we want to stitch at a 1/4 inch seam allowance along the top side of our slip pocket. My phone died partway through stitching some of that, but now that we are done stitching that, we need to fold back our 2 pieces, crease them well, flip back our pocket, line up our bottoms. I'm going to stick my hand up in between the 2 pieces and push out that seam along the top. Line up our bottoms again and crease our top pocket. I don't like to see my lining peeking through from the front side, so I do try and roll over the exterior vinyl just a tad over the lining fabric so that it doesn't peek out once we top stitch. If it does, it's okay. It's just a personal preference. So once we have that folded, we're going to top stitch along the edge of the top of our pocket. Now we need to add our magnetic snap to our mark that we had marked here with our male side of our snap. So just to double check that we have this in the center, I like to wait till after we're done stitching just in case things shifted a little bit. So mark my centers. Then I can use my ruler to line up to the bottom, the center point of my triangle that we just snipped, and make sure that that mark is right in the middle of our front pocket. So line up my grid to the bottom, line it up to the side there, and just mark it to make sure. So we can see here that there's our middle line there. So again, we have two sides of our magnet. I like to put the one that has the pokey outy side on the front flap of the pocket so that the smooth side is on the inside of our pocket piece that would be closest to our body. So we're going to take our washer, center it up on our mark, and mark our lines there. And now we can snip those out with an X-Acto knife or with your seam ripper. So now we can stick our prongs from the right side. Add our washer. And I like to push the prongs out on this one. And because it is cotton fabric, I am going to put a little bit of self-adhesive TheraFuse over the top to cover it and secure it. You could also put a piece underneath as well if you'd like a little bit more stability. But because I think this is such a small pocket just used to open and close, I think that's enough to secure it. Now we do want to add a name tag if you're going to add a name tag. I'm going to put mine on my front pocket. So just like we did with a magnetic snap, we don't have a marking here, but I have my center point at the bottom. So I can take my ruler, line up the bottom line, matching it with the center point of my triangle, and draw my center point. I'm going to put it about 2.5 inches up from the bottom, line up my center line with the line on my ruler, and I can mark across the top. That will give me my center point line, so I can line up my washer right to the middle point of my washer here. So that's the middle my washer. The line goes through the middle of the boxes, and I can mark my up and down points. Just like we did for our snap. Take our nameplate, fold our prongs in. Slide on our washer. And for these, I do like to push them in just because they're a little bit bigger and it has a little bit more room. And then add a piece of TheraFuse self-adhesive over the top. Helps hold it in place and as well gives it a little bit of cushion to protect it from wearing through our lining fabric. So now we have our front pocket complete. We need to take our main body panel, and she had marked as well on the pattern pieces where the magnet lines up here. But what I like to do, just to double check, since things do shift, it's never exactly in the right spot, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to baste this on first. That way it's less likely to shift around on. Okay, so now that our pocket is basted on, to get an exact fit, of where our magnetic snap can go, so we can try and feel where it is back here, and it does feel like it may be just slightly off. So I'm going to take my chalk pencil and I'm just going to put a little bit of chalk right on the magnet that I have there. If it's a darker material, it really helps a lot. If it's light colored, it's a little bit harder to see. We're just going to push that onto our back piece. So now we have a little dot right here where we can see it as our center point for our washer. So I'm going to sit my washer directly on the mark that we just made with our chalk. And I'm going to draw my lines from my washer. Carefully take your X-Acto knife and mark your holes. So once our holes are cut, we can stick our magnet through our holes, and we can double check that our magnet fits. If it fits, flip it over, add our washer, and add a piece of Therafuse to the back. That way our pocket snap lines up perfect and we aren't just a little bit off. And our front panel is done, so we can sit that aside. Now we want to work with our exterior back pocket. Just like we did the front pocket, there are options for magnetic snaps to place those on these pieces. On my tester that I did do a seam down the back, and I really liked that because it gave me a spot to stick my phone close to my body, and I didn't have to worry about the magnet opening over time and things sliding around. So I think I'm going to do that one on this one again. So I'm going to place my back panels together for my pocket. Want to make sure my fabric is right sides up. And on the pattern pieces, she does give directional print arrows that really helps when stitching together and cutting out to make sure everything's going the right direction. Press our pocket back. Roll our edges. And now we need to top stitch along the top of our back pocket. Just like we did for our front panel. If you are going to add a magnet, do so now onto your front panel and then baste it on to your back panel. And I want to trim any excess that for any reason sticking over the bottom here. So when we add our gusset, that'll make it a lot easier. Sometimes with stretchy vinyls and fabrics, just trimming, we just need to make sure they all match. Okay, so then we can find our center point, the bottom here. And just like we found our center mark on the panel for our name tag, I'm going to do it on the front. So I'm going to line up the bottom with the center point of my middle triangle and draw a chalk line down the center. And that will be my center line that I can stitch for my pocket. Back stitch well. And when I back stitch on something that's on the front, I just pull this thread back to the back, and then I can trim it off back here so there's not a small thread stuck on the front. And then we can just wipe off our chalk. And now we have our back panel. Now we want to work on assembling our gusset pieces. So we have 3 pieces for our interior and we have 3 pieces for our exterior. Our exterior should have 2 pieces with Decaville Light in the middle, and those are shorter pieces. And then we have 1 longer piece with Decaville Heavy for the bottom. Make sure that you have the one with Decaville Heavy or Peltex, whatever you used for the base, as there is another piece that's the same length that has Decaville Light. So we want to make sure that this one has the heavy. And we are going to start by adding these face down, right sides together. We can add a clip here. And then also the other side, right sides together. And we want to stitch those on at a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Flip it around and do the same for the other side. Stitch it together at a 1/4 inch. Now we need to push open our seams here, and we want to top stitch down both sides of our seams that we just made. And do the same to this seam. Butterfly our seams open so that they're each going to the side. And then top stitch down at 1/8 inch on each side of our seam. So now we have our gusset piece attached, and this will wrap around the bag. So this Decaville Heavy piece will be the bottom, and these pieces will come up the sides. So what we need to do now is we need to add our D-ring connectors. So if you're going to use hardware connectors, if you're going to sew them on the top, or hidden D-rings, this is where we do that now. So to find our placement, I'm going to clip the centers. And I'm just pinching the top since we do have Decaville Light on those pieces. And just snip a little triangle. So now we can find our center point of our side connectors. Same for this side. The pattern suggests making our D-ring sit about 1 inch down from the top. So if you're using a connector, just line up that from 1 inch from the top. I am doing a hidden D-ring connector, and I think I'm going to go about 1.5 inches down on this one just to make sure I have enough room when I'm top stitching. And I'm going to draw that line at 1.5 inches down. So I'm doing a 3/4 inch strap. I'm going to make a 3/4 inch hidden D-ring. And this is a template that we have created to make it super easy for you. So you just line up our line that we have made across the top here with our center mark, and we're just going to mark out our 3/4 inch mark. So now we have our hidden D-ring tab there, and we can do it on this side as well. So line it up to the center, line it up with our 1.5 inch mark, and mark it out. Now we need to take our X-Acto knife and we need to cut along the top of the triangle that or the mark that we just made. Because our pin thickness is thicker, we want to cut along the inside of the mark that we just drew. So we're not cutting across the bottom, we are just cutting across our little TP that we made. So our 2 short sides, and then our long side across the top. So now you have a little tab here. Flip it around, do the same on the other side. Cutting on the inside of the lines that we just drew. So now we have our tab here. So we can take our D-ring connector that we made earlier. We are going to flip it so this back side or wrong side is facing us. We are going to thread it into our hole, and it's going to be pretty snug, but you just don't want to rip the vinyl in the corners, but you want it to be snug. So if you're struggling, make sure that it's trimmed all the way to that line there. So we're going to pull it in just about little under halfway. So I'd rather have more on the top than on the bottom here. And I'm going to flip it over. So now we are looking at the wrong side. We have our strap just a little over halfway sticking out of the top. And I want to stitch along this line right here. So we want to stitch as close as we can to the edge, not extending past our side marks for our strap. Because if we stitch past it, the stitches will come along the side here. I want you to backstitch, but I don't want you to backstitch excessively. If we backstitch excessively, it's going to perforate our strap and make it weaker over time. So we just need a basic stitch, backstitch at the beginning, backstitch at the end, making sure not to go past the edges on the side. You may need to switch to a smaller stitch length here, but again, we don't want to be so small that it perforates our vinyl. So it should look like this. You'll have a stitch on the front, and your stitch on the back should be just above that line that we drew. Now we'll take our D-ring, we'll add it onto the top part, fold our excess piece, and tuck it into the hole here. So you may need to lift it up a little and wiggle it in. If you need to, you can use hemostats to grab the end and pull that strap through. So now we have our hidden connector tucked in, no raw edge, and we just want to pull this snug and even. We don't want to pull excessively because we don't want to pull on our stitches from the top, but we do want it to be nice and secure in there. So make sure it's even. Tuck it up in there. And once you have it where you like it, we need to secure the back side. So to do that, we're going to flip over our connector. We need to, so this is the back side. It's going to kind of stick up. Fold back the top piece and expose our little tab that we left out earlier. So it's just our strap and our tab. And we're going to stitch along our tab as close to the line as we can get it. So you may need to switch to a zipper foot. And we're just going to stitch along there. Not excessive back stitch because that will or may weaken your strap over time. So I'm just going to put my foot as close as I can to the edge. So now we have stitched along this edge right here. So our hidden connector now is secure. So we can go ahead and add a rivet if you prefer, or you could also stitch for extra security along that top. I don't really feel like it needs the stitches, but if you'd like to do stitches instead of a rivet, that's okay too. So our template that we have made here has a rivet guide as well. So it has for the inch, 3/4, and a 1/2 inch as well. So we just need to line that up. And mark our center point. Now that will be where we punch our rivet and add our rivet. I'm going to do the other side first before I add my rivet. So I'm going to take my strap, wrong sides facing me, thread it through the hole. Again, we want it to be snug because we don't want those raw edges showing. Pull it in just a little under half and straighten it out. To make this strap straight, you can line it up there. We can also use our rivet guide that we did here when we marked our top. You can add the lines at the bottom here for your strap so you know where that sits. So if we want our middle line here, line our 3/4 up at the top, mark our marks, and then you can put your strap right in between those lines there and hold it straight. Once you get the hang of it, it's super simple just to kind of follow this line up and eyeball it straight. But if you want that extra security, we did add that there so that you could line it up perfect. And as you see here on the front, we have just stitched just inside of our strap. So if we were to have gone and stitched past, it would show up on the side here, which isn't a big deal. It's just a little less desirable. Add our D-ring and thread the D-ring through our opening. Like I said, because I interfaced both of these, it's a little bit thicker, but I like it snug. So again, we're going to want to pull this in tight and straighten it out. Make sure everything is straightened. Now we can flip it over, just exposing our strap and our tab and stitch along the line here on our tab. Double check, make sure everything is good there. Our straps are secure. So we can add our rivet. Line up to the edge of our seam there. Center with our lines. So this one here is going to be our 1/2 inch, 3/4, and inch. So you can line this 1/2 inch up with our stitching and then our 3/4 with the outside edge. Mark your dot in the center. And now we can add our rivets. I went ahead and added my rivets. And now we have just our strap at the bottom. I do like to leave a little bit of excess, so as long as it's not extreme, you can leave that. If you have way longer side than the other, I do just trim it a little bit shorter. And then for a little bit of extra security, I'll add a piece of duct tape to the back. We do want to keep it out of our seam allowance though, so make sure you trim it down. As much as you can. So just a little bit of extra security behind that rivet and stitches. This side, I think I'll actually just go side to side. And now we need to work on our lining gusset, which is going to be the same thing minus our D-ring connectors. So we're going to take our lining bottom, face down with our, make sure direction wise we're going the same way. So face down here, face down this way. And we're going to stitch those on at 1/4 inch seam allowance. If you'd like, you can top stitch along the sides of both of those by pushing the seam allowance out and top stitch down the side. I think for this one, I'm going to just fold it over to one side and top stitch down towards the center. So now we have our lining gusset. We can set that aside and we want to work on our interior pockets. For our slip pocket, we want to fold it right sides together and stitch around the open edges at 1/4 inch. You do not need to stitch along the folded edge. So we're just going to start at our folded edge. I do like to take my bottom edge, especially because it's such a small seam allowance, and fold it back before I turn it. That'll give me a little bit of a crease line and makes it a little bit less wonky. So I think sometimes once we have it turned out, it's harder to get that perfect seam along the bottom and it may become a little bit wavy. So you can do that. You could also add a piece of double-sided tape if you'd like to really hold that back. Do want to clip the corners. Want to get as close as I can to the stitching without cutting into the stitching. If we cut into that stitching, Then once we turn it, it may fray a little bit on the inside, and we don't want that. So we just want to get as close as we can to reduce that bulk, and then just turn through our hole at the bottom, poking out our corners as we go. So with our corners trimmed to the edge, you can kind of poke those in together at the same time, and that'll make a good corner for us for when we turn. So you can kind of pinch it together before you push it in and poke out that corner. If you need to, you can use a chopstick or something with kind of a small blunt edge so you don't poke through that corner. Since we're using cotton, you can take it over to your iron and press it as well. If you have a chopstick, you can kind of poke out those corners. I like to run it along the side seam to the bottom to poke out that bottom corner. That kind of takes away that U shape from the seam allowance not getting pushed out on the side. Let's poke out our top corner, run it along the side seam all the way to that bottom corner. And just add a couple clips to hold that bottom closed for now. But when we top stitch it on to our panel, it'll stitch that closed. Since I need my pocket right side up, I'm going to top stitch along the top of my slip pocket. Next, we can take our lining, one of our lining panels, find our center, mark the middle. So I'm going to go ahead and do the top and the bottom. And we want to place our slip pocket an inch down from our center point. So our chalk line is center. And then we can do the same this way. Find our center point an inch down and draw a chalk line. Now we can take our pocket, fold it in half to find our center crease, and line it up to our line that we just drew. So I know it's kind of busy and hard to see, but we do have our pocket there. Going to take a little bit of masking tape and I'm going to just hold it along the top and the bottom. Now we need to top stitch this on at 1/8 of an inch all the way around. Backstitch really well at the beginning and the end. You can move my tape as we come around. now we need to split our slip pocket in half. So I'm just going to use the lines from the triangles of my snips in the top and the bottom and draw a chalk line on my pocket. Now I can stitch right down that chalk line to split my pocket in half. And our slip pocket is complete for that side. So let's work on our other pocket with our zipper. For our zipper pocket, we want to work about a 1/2 inch down from the top. She has included a template on her pattern piece to trace. Since I didn't print out that pattern piece because it's a rectangle, I'm just going to use the zipper pocket guide that I have from Mormino. Because this is such a small pocket, I'm not going to do the typical 1 inch down. I'm going to do a 1/2 inch down, which is what she has in the pattern as well. So I think that will be good to keep it out of the bottom. So we'll draw our center point, our center line here. And then I'm going to mark a 1/2 inch down, and it's a 6.5 inch zipper. So I'm gonna go 1, 2, 3 1/4, 1, 2, 3 1/4. Now I can use my template that I have, and I'm just going to line up the top line and the edge mark that I made down here, and I'll box that off. I'll come down here and draw my side line for here. Draw a center line down the middle. And mark your triangles. So now we need to cut down our center mark and our triangles. Fold it in half. And snip along our line. Now we can stick our scissors in our snip that we made. Now we want to fold back on the lines. And since we're using cotton, you can take it over to the iron and press. Okay, so I've went ahead and added some double-sided tape to keep that flat. And we can move on to add our pocket to our zipper. And I do want to say there's just so many ways to make zipper pockets that you're just going to have to find what works for you and use that method. This method of folding the top back and you know, not having another piece of fabric behind it isn't necessarily my preferred method, but I do like to show you a variety of different ways in videos so that you could see a difference in how to do it. I just recommend that once you find a way, that you just stick with that and use that for every pattern. All you need to do is find the measurements for how far down you need to go on the lining and how wide it's going to be, and then you can use a template like this. It doesn't have to be the exact size of this template, or you could make it this size if it fits every time, and that's going to be what makes your bags more consistent. You don't have to do the way that the pattern designer writes in every single bag. Adapt your ways to each and every bag that you make, and then it'll become quicker and more consistent every time. So we're going to stitch this zipper onto our lining piece, or zipper lining, I should say. And then we'll do the same. Right side up, line up our pocket. And the pocket prints should be facing each other. So right sides together. And just push your seams open so everything's nice and flat. And I'm going to add a small strip of double-sided tape right along that stitch line that I made. Don't forget to add our zipper pull. We want to go from opening on the left side to the right side. So I'm going to take my lining piece and I'm going to lay it on top of my zipper, centering everything in the hole. So I'm going to slide over so that my pocket's even, and remove the double-sided tape backing so I could line up the zipper in our window. Flip it back, pull off our double-sided tape backing on the bottom. Just making sure everything is lined up in our window. Now we need to top stitch our zipper on around our box. I want to mark my turning points using an 1/8 inch around all sides. So that's one box on the bottom, one box on the side, and mark a small dot. Small turning dot there. And the same for this side. And this will help you pivot when you go around your box so that you don't have a couple off stitches that it takes when you turn your corner. Just much easier and mindless for me to do that as I sew. So we're going to start at the bottom dot, go across the bottom to our other dot. We need to flip our pocket out of the way from the bottom. I'm going to pull long threads so I can tie those on the back. Pull our threads long and tie them in the back. trim our threads, flip our pocket back down, and now we need to finish top stitching around the other 3 sides. So I'm going to pull long tails, drop my needle where our stitching stopped at the bottom, and stitch around. Pull our thread tails, pull them through to the back. I somehow stitched through my thread on the other side, so I'm going to manually stick it through to the other side. The hand sewing needle, I've linked them in my favorite things list that'll be in the description. That way now I can tie it off without worrying about shredding my thread. And now we need to close up our pocket. So I'm just going to start on this side, stitch down. Since I did cut my pocket at the bottom so that it would be right sides up, I will need a stitch across the bottom, but if you folded yours like the pattern has, then you don't need to do that. So now we can put our lining zipper panel aside, and we need to work on our top zipper panel. We want to take our 4 zipper pieces or our top zipper plackets, and you may have 2 lining and 2 exterior, and that's fine. I just wanted all vinyl on mine, and we were going to mark a 1/2 inch down on all 4 pieces at the top and the bottom of the short edges. My small table, sometimes it's really hard to show you guys and keep everything in the frame. I'm just marking 1/2 inch on all the sides, all the short sides. And now we want to run double-sided tape on the edges next to the line that we just drew so that we can fold over the edges. So now we need to take our zipper and we need to fold the edges down to form a 90-degree angle. So I like to do one side first. Typically it's my left side. Not sure why, just a little bit easier for me. And then I can pinch down my right side. So we're going to pinch the zipper and fold the zipper back to match. If it's a little bit off, we need to readjust, pinch, and fold. So now we have our two sides of our zippers at 90-degree angles. We need to stitch down the side of our zipper to secure those in place. So now your zipper should look like this. So we have kind of little butterfly wings off to the side. We need to trim those off. Any extra little threads that we have here. And trim off the excess. Do like to take a lighter and burn the edges here to keep it from fraying and hold those threads in. Okay, so I previously said that we needed to mark and fold over the edges on all four sides, but we only need to do the one short edge of all four pieces. So not the top and the bottom, just one side. We will mark down. So you have the strips full and only the tops folded on the four pieces. On the other edge, we are going to mark a 1/2 inch down from the non-folded edge on the front side. And that is where we're going to line up our folded zipper face down, and we're going to baste this down along the side of our zipper placard. So with our zipper lined up with that 1/2 inch mark, we baste our zipper down. Now we need to take our lining piece and we're going to put it face down, lining up our raw edges at the top and our folded edges at the bottom. And clip in place. So you can either sew at 1/4 inch or fold this back to our 1/2 inch line. And now we need to sew this together as close as you can to the zipper using a zipper foot or your normal zipper seam allowance. So once we have our zipper stitched on, we need to fold our panels wrong sides together, lining up our folded edges, tuck in our folds, add a couple clips to hold that. Same thing for the bottom here. Tuck in our folds. Add a clip. now we need to top stitch along the top, down our zipper, and across the bottom, and then baste our side shut. And baste down the side. So we have half of our zipper placard done. Now we just need to do the other side. The same thing, our 1/2 inch mark down from the top. We're going to line up our zipper and it should match our other side. So it's all just personal preference on how you do your zipper plackets. There's many different ways, just like the interior zipper pocket. So you just have to find what works for you, what style you like best, because you can also do one long strip instead of 2 strips for each side. And that's perfectly acceptable. There's no right or wrong answers, anything like that. It's just really what you prefer for your zippers. What method you can remember, what method you like doing best. If one gives you an issue, try a different way. That's why it's so great. There's so many people who do so many videos, because you can pick up different tips and tricks from everyone. So now we have our zipper placard done. We need to find the center points on each side. So I'm going to go ahead, before I separate my zipper, I'm going to fold it in half, clip my center. Same for the other side, and I like to do it while they're still zipped up, so just in case it's a tad off, it still fits together nicely. So now we can take our top contrast pieces, our zipper placard, and our 2 lining pieces, our slip pocket piece and our zipper pocket piece, and we need to attach these together. So how we're going to do that is we're going to decide which pocket we want on the back side, and our zipper's going the correct way. So my zipper's over here, my zipper's over here. I would like this piece, to go with this pocket. This piece will go with my other pocket. So I'm going to take one of my contrasting pieces with my lining, and I need to find the center on that as well. And the top center, the bottom center. And I have my centers marked on my zipper and my lining as well. So I need to zipper sandwich my zipper placard right side up with my lining pocket, and my contrast piece needs to go face down onto my zipper sandwich. So I'm actually going to baste baste this placard in place first. Move my zipper out of the way. I think on the next one I may move that zipper pocket down. It's a tad close. Yeah, I think I definitely move that zipper down just a hair on the next time I make one. It's just a little bit close for my foot. So I'm going to do the face down, line up the center marks. There's 1/4 inch seam allowance. So now when we flip up our contrasting pocket, we have our contrasting pocket, our zipper, and our interior zipper. And if I push this interior zipper down a tad, maybe it would give me enough room to top stitch that up. I don't think I have enough room to do that with the zipper. So I prefer to fold this back and top stitch along the bottom here, but I don't have enough room with that. So I think I'll top stitch along this seam here. And just because things shrink, things move, I'm going to trim this excess off there. And now we need to repeat the same thing for the other lining piece. So I'm going to line up my zipper right side up and baste that on. Find the centers of our contrast piece. And add that face down and stitch on at 1/4 inch seam allowance. So our ends should and like this one I would have top stitched along the bottom here, but since I didn't have enough room on the other one, I'm going to top stitch along this top panel here. I have decided that I wanted to do this bag as a drop-in lining so that you don't have to turn it through the gusset. So before I add my gussets on, I want to draw a line around the exterior top of my bag. That way it'll give me a line to fold to. So our seam allowance for the bag has been 1/4 inch, but that's kind of tough to fold over. So I'm going to go 5/8 inch just to give me a little extra room folding over. And you'll see why later on. So I'm going to do 5/8 on all the pieces that I have completed. Now we can work with one side of our lining piece and our lining gusset. We're going to want to line up our center marks along the bottom and add a couple clips. We really want to focus on our seams for our sides, that they line up about 1/4 inch from the side. So once we get to that corner, we want to pivot and go up the sides. So I'm going to clip these. Then I'm going to bring my raw edges up to the top, clip that, and work my way back down the side. And then we're going to work our way to the other side. I'm going to clip my zipper up in the center so that that is up and out of the way. Bring the raw edge up to the top. So now we're going to start at the top, work our way down. Once we hit our seam for the side, then we can pivot and turn. I'm going to check our corners. Flip it out and see how they look in there. And now we need to repeat with the other side panel. If you are turning the bag, you need to leave a hole in the bottom of the lining. Going to clip my centers together. Work my way over to the corners. And this side, it's easier for me to line up my centers and put my needle down right in the crease here of our seam and stitch across the bottom first. We want to line up this corner, and as we approach that seam, we'll stop in the seam and pivot at the seam and stitch up towards the top at 1/4 inch. Pivot. Line up our side seams. The lining gusset may have a little bit extra fabric, so we're going to line up our exteriors and just trim off the remaining lining. We will need to fix our line here that we drew though. So now we're going to do the same thing for this side, is that we need to roll up our edge. And we could stitch down at 1/4 inch, following to that seam at the bottom. So face down, I'm going to put my needle in that crease at the 1/4 inch where we first stopped. Going to pivot and line up my sides. And stitch up the top. Okay, so now we have our interior completely assembled. I do think it was easier to start at one end, so across the bottom and up the side, and then repeat on this side to do the same. So I think on the exterior, that's what I'll do, is I'll start in the middle, stitch up to the top, and then back down. So I need to adjust the excess that I had here, my line for making it a drop-in. So I'm just going to, turn this around here. And I need to mark 5/8 down, since I had a little excess on the top of my gusset. Same thing here. It looks like it was the same amount on each side, so I'm wondering if she had that built in to the gusset. Perfect. So now let's do the same thing for our exterior. We have our exterior front, our exterior back, and we have our gusset piece. So we need to find the middle. And line up our seams, snip our middle. And I'm going to start with the front side, since I think the front is a little easier usually, or the first panel I guess is a little easier. I'm going to line up our center marks. And like I said, I found it easier to stitch to the seam and then turn and go up. So that's what I'm going to do from this side. Is I'm going to start about the middle, 1/4 of an inch. Drop my needle right in between that seam and pivot, and then I just need to grab my gusset and manipulate that over. Line everything up to the top. Add a couple of clips here. So I have my needle dropped. I've pulled my gusset over to the side, and then I'm going to stitch up. I might need a narrow foot here to get to the top. Check our corners on the inside, and then we can repeat on this side. Drop my needle in the side seam and stitch across the Now that we have our seam there, we can turn our corner. And line up our edges. And stitch down the top side. Kind of flipping the D-ring up out of the way. Narrow foot or zipper foot would really help in that area. And lift our foot up, drop it right in that seam, and backstitch. So now we can check our corners and make sure everything meets nice and neat in that corner, and then repeat for the back panel. Clip the bottom center seam. And I think I can drop my needle in here at the corner. It's a little tricky to get in that way, so I'm going to come back the other way. I'm going to start a little ways in. Just go really slow in this area. Grab your fabric, make sure it's lined up along the edges. Line up your side seams. Line up your gusset to the top. You take your time and readjust as needed. Careful of that D-ring once we get close to that. And now we need to do this other side. So again, it was kind of tricky getting it over there, so I think I'm going to start at the top now. Starting at the top. I know it can't really shift at the bottom, so I've already stitched a majority of that. Flip your D-ring out of the way if you can. Then we can pivot at that 1/4 inch mark. And backstitch at our point where we started. This one has a pretty tight gusset, but if you just take your time, you can really get those seams to match up nice. Check your corners. And then I'm just going to snip the edges of the corners on all 4 sides. Okay, so now I've turned my bag. I use a blow dryer to really loosen up all the material. It just softens it up, makes it so much more pliable. I think it really loosens up the adhesive on the back side so that any wrinkles when you turn it don't stay. By the time the adhesive has time to settle again, all the wrinkles are already smoothed out. So you should have your exterior piece, and we should have our interior lining. Our lining is going to just slide right in. Since I'm doing a drop-in, it's going to slide right into my exterior, but I'm going to add double-sided tape first around the edges so that it's a little bit easier to assemble. So I'm going to take double-sided tape and I'm going to run it right along the top edge of my lining. I want to butterfly open the side seams. Just kind of use the tape to push those down. Butterfly our side seams open here. Working my way around the edge. We don't want to pull the tape tight and we don't want to leave it loose and bubbly. Just nice and smooth around the bag as we go across. Back to where we started. Lay this one flat and meet at the beginning. So now I have my tape around the exterior. I'm going to begin to peel off the tape, and I'm going to fold down to the line that I drew before we assembled our bag. So I'm just meeting that line that we drew. So it goes all the way around the bag. As we get to the thicker areas, I'm going to place a clip to hold it in place and just work my way around the bag, pushing the exterior down to meet our drawn line. So you get to the side seams, just kind of open it up a little. Do like to go a little bit ahead and then work back so that it all fits nice. Open up that side seam, push it down to meet. And then we'll quickly meet back where we started. If you have key fob pliers, you can just gently squeeze those seam areas. So that's our thickest part. And it'll really just distribute the bulkiness there. So I'm just going to take these. It's a little bit high here. So if you see anything that's kind of not down far enough, just fix it real quick. Squeeze it down just a tad. And add your clips. So we'll set that aside for a second, and we're going to do the same thing to our exterior, but we need to add the double-sided tape to the inside edge. Just above our line to work around. Used to doing this in my lap, so I don't know how the best angle to get it for you. Maybe if I stand up. So I don't want to pull my tape too tight or it'll cause wrinkles in the vinyl. So it's just laying it down nice and smooth. So we come around our side seams. It's difficult doing it for the camera. So you have it so close. Open up our side seams here. Lay our tape across so it holds it open. Same thing here. Open up our side seams. Lay it flat. Work around. I need another small piece. A lot of people would ask, why did I decide to do a drop-in lining? I will do a drop-in lining on almost any bag I can because I absolutely hate turning them through a pocket. I always get wrinkles, I always get separation on the linings. If I can turn the bag with a blow dryer and get a really nice crisp edge without a lining attached to it, without my top stitching, yet without having to flip it through a pocket, finish a gusset through a pocket hole, I just feel like it's so much easier for me to not have to do that. So it takes a little bit of extra time right here, but it also eliminates a step of having to stitch around the bag completely, because you would normally put your lining inside out, stitch it down, then flip it and top stitch. So by folding this down, we're not going to have to do that initial stitch. So it's one less trip around the bag that you have to make with stitching, which if you guys don't have a cylinder arm, it can be pretty tricky. You don't want to have to smush your bag any more than you have to. I feel like I'm able to get a really nice finish, a really nice even bag with a little bit less hassle on my hands, on the bag, on everything involved. Typically I do prefer a bigger seam allowance, like a 1/2 inch, just gives you a little bit more room to work with on the fold over. But sometimes if the pattern doesn't allow, you can add it, or you just have a little seam. So just squishing down the edges. So now we need to stick our lining into our exterior. So double check which side that you like. I prefer the zipper side to go towards my body, and also the zipper going left to right, so the way our zipper placard was put in earlier. And we're just going to slide our lining into our exterior. Make sure that you've trimmed the seam allowance down on your interior so that it fits nice and snug. It doesn't have any excess vinyl. And I'm going to line up my side seams on the lining and the exterior. So our side seams will line up on the gusset. Add a couple clips as I go around, lining up the gusset. And then you can clip around the rest of the way. If your machine can handle sewing through double-sided tape or close to double-sided tape, you can also run a strip of double-sided tape in between the interior and the exterior to hold everything in place while you top stitch, especially if you don't have a cylinder arm and you still have to kind of smush it under your machine. It just really helps those two layers stay together. So once I get this clipped up, I'm going to add some double-sided tape between my layers. And you just may have to spread your bag out a little bit to get everything to lay nice. And we're just looking for all our edges to be lined up, the side seams to be lined up. So it'd be perfectly okay just to go ahead and top stitch now, but just for a little bit of extra security and things shifting, I'm going to add double-sided tape between the two layers. Now we only have a couple clips left to deal with as we top stitch and deal with the slipping. And I just keep a couple in there just for peace of mind, I think. I don't think you really need them. Really open up that side seam, match those together, clip. Match up that side seam, and then we're back to where we started. The amazing part of a cylinder arm is now I can take off my table. It's just one quick screw. The worst part about the cylinder arm machine and sewing with you guys is that you can see my messy floor and my feet, but Nancy from Fabric Therapy sent me these amazing socks so you guys can't see my toes because I sew barefoot. Can't sew with shoes on. So yeah, Florida we wear flip-flops a lot, and Nancy sent me these amazing cozy socks. So I'll link them down in the description if you sew barefoot too. They're amazing, super soft, comfy, and I can't thank her enough for sending them to me. So let's get started top stitching. Going to pull my thread tails long, and I like to start at the edge just behind the front of the bag. So the back seam of the side. So I like to put my foot down, drop my needle into the seam with my thread tails long. Make sure you're on top stitching length. There we go. Is that any better? So I have my needle dropped right into the back side seam. And here we go. As we come back around, we're just going to drop that needle right into the hole where we first started stitching. It's going to be right in that side seam. Press our foot up, pull out our thread tails long, and trim. So now we've top stitched all the way around our bag. We need to secure our threads. So we're going to take our threads and we're going to pull them through to the center of our bag. Thread your two outsides. And they're going to go into the hole where we stopped and out up through that center seam. So my needle is coming up through the center seam. So now we have our back threads are pulled up through the middle. Going to do the same for the interior. Through the hole in the middle where we stopped stitching. Up through the center, so we're coming up between the exterior and the interior. So right here, we're between the exterior and the interior. We're pulling those threads through. So now we have all 4 threads coming between the interior and the exterior, and we can tie those in a knot. Couple knots for good measure. Oops. So now we have our 4 threads secured together, our top stitching tied off. So to get rid of these threads, trim all 4 tails even. We're going to thread all 4 of them through the needle. Take them back down where you tied the knot. So our knot is right here. We're going to go straight down into that side seam, and I want to try and come out in my fabric in the side seam about 3 or 4 inches down into the bag. Because we put double-sided tape there, it can be a little tricky. But once you get past that, you'll start to see your needle poke through the lining side seam. So we have our needle coming out down here. Pull your needle with all the threads all the way through. Pull all the threads, and that'll sink your knot down nice and tight. The reason why we come 3 or 4 inches down into the side seam is so now I can put some tension on these threads and trim them, and when I pull back on that lining, they'll sink into the lining between the layers, and you'll still have a few inches of security in between them. So now our bag is top stitched. It's all finished. We just need to add our zipper pull. I like to leave my zipper tails super long. This one's probably a little excessive just because I haven't made this bag very much, so I don't know how long to leave them. But I don't like a short zipper. I like to be able to open up my bag all the way, and I'll show you how I trim it down and how I decide how long I like my zipper. So I'm just adding my zipper pull. Look at that little dinosaur zipper pull. How freaking cute is that? So I like to open my purse to the very width, and I kind of squeeze it out. So if I could open it as wide as I can. So once it's wide, then I'll come about an inch past our opening, and that's where I'm going to trim, and I'm going to put my zipper end. Going to trim our zipper, seal the ends. So now that we have our zipper ends burned, I'm going to fold under the edges of our zipper to a point, and you can add a drop of glue if you'd like. You can just slide our zipper end on. So it glues a little bit easier if you can glue this on first. So you slide your zipper end on. And then flip it over and add our little screw into the back side. So now we have our zipper end that can get tucked inside our bag, but it has enough excess zipper so that you can open the bag all the way without any trouble. But it's not an excessive amount of zipper tape left to be hanging in the bag, but it's enough to where you can get in there and dig around and get whatever you need out. And we did our handle strap earlier to make it a handbag. We could be finished, but I think real quick I'm going to make a crossbody strap to see which one we like better. We're going to make the crossbody strap the same way we made the handle in the beginning. So I just wanted to take a few minutes to answer one of my most common questions I get, and that's, what machine do I sew with? I sew with the TechSew 2750 Pro. It is a cylinder arm machine with a walking foot. Why I chose this machine is because I was having trouble with the flatbed machine that I had originally. I knew that if I was going to get another machine, that I would probably want to upgrade to a cylinder arm. So I began my search looking locally on Marketplace, and that's where I found this machine. It was from a local leather shop, and they were moving from their home to a shop, and they had several in their shop already. So I got a great deal on this one. So with that being said, I think there are many great companies out there that offer cylinder arm machines. It is a great option for bag makers to use to be able to remove that tray on the top to make it a full cylinder arm and also a flatbed. So just do your research, find a company that works best for you, and go with them. I truly do love my TechSew that I have, but there are other great companies as well. So I hope that helps you a little bit with what machine I have and why I have it, but I wouldn't change it for the world, and if you have the means to get a cylinder arm, I do recommend getting that. Thank you so much for making the Breeze handbag with me today. I really hope you enjoyed it. If it helped you in any way, please hit the like button on the way out. And if you haven't subscribed already, please do so you get notifications for other videos like this. And if you don't mind, drop in the comments below if you prefer the handbag style or the crossbody. I really couldn't decide, so that's why I made both. I know I could probably shorten the crossbody to a handbag style, but sometimes it's just nice to have the option to be able to change it out and have that set style without the extra strap. So let me know below what you think. Also, if you have any other video requests, concerns, anything like that, let me know in the comments below. I'd love to hear from you. And don't forget to join my group, Creating with Joleelee. Thanks!